Okay, so thanks everyone for being here. Thanks for coming to the debate. I think most of you know me. For those of you who don't, my name is Grazer Cabello, and I'm running for Engineering Society president. I've been a past officer of NSOC before, and I know that NSOC can at times seem disconnected from students. And I'm running for president because I think we should have an NSOC that works on things that matter to everyone, and I can deliver stable, competent leadership to make that happen. I think that NSOC's main priority should be our representative role and our academic advocacy that we do to improve the academic experience here. And we do an okay job of it now, but I think we could do a bit better. I think that we could better coordinate with discipline clubs, with departments, handle things at the departmental level as well, because that's where a lot of the issues that we can actually solve in a 1 to 2 year time frame can actually get done. So I'm going to better coordinate with them, with class reps, with faculty council standing committee reps, and make that the core focus of the Engineering Society and engage more people in it. There's shockingly few people involved in that right now, and I'd like to expand that a bit more. The other thing that I really want to focus on is clubs and our support for student teams. And it's not just about funding. I think that we can increase funding a bit more by eliminating the external relations director that was recently created outright and just getting rid of that and giving those extra $2,000 into the club's funding pool. Another thing that I want to explore is the possibility of merging the club's funding pool with the miscellaneous conference pool. Currently, we give 15% up to $200 for people going to any conference for any reason that's related to professional development. And to be quite honest, a 15% subsidy isn't enough to make it affordable for someone who wouldn't otherwise be able to go. And if they can't afford to go, then I think there's better benefit giving that money to clubs that have a bigger impact on the community than just handing it over to individual people for their own personal professional development when so many other things like the Your Next Career Network exist to fill that gap. So I think we can still expand funding. But it's not just about the amount of money that we give student clubs and teams. I think we can expand it a bit more by providing better resources to them, better promoting the resources and finding opportunities that exist at the university level, as well as clarifying to them once and for all how we actually decide what money we give them. We do an okay job and we're accountable for what we do, and the process is fair and legitimate, but the finance committee comes up with different criteria every year for what clubs get what money, and there's also a cost-cutting mentality. How much can we get away with cutting their budgets? And I think that's wrong. I think we should have like a legitimate set of criteria that doesn't change year to year, where that clubs can count on to not change and to be constant, and that actually define who gets what money. And I know that during elections, lots of people promise lots of things, and I think the key difference here is that I actually have experience doing all of these things. I'm not running on a whim. I'm not, I didn't get here overnight. I've been part of the Engineering Society for the past 3 years, and I don't think experience is just a list of a few positions that you've had, and that's it. I think that it also has to do with the relevance of the positions and the things that you've done. The first thing I ever did for the Engineering Society was show up to a policy committee in the winter term of the first year and
50 cents
and help with the UTSU issue. I've been involved in the endowment fund. I've been involved with the creation of the board, so I know how NSOC works. I know how things work around here, and you can trust that I'll spend not very much time doing the job, but a lot of time doing it right. So I hope you can count your support, and thanks for being here, and thanks for listening.
Hi guys, hope you're doing okay. Once again, I'd also like to thank you for being here. It's actually nice to see some fresh faces in the crowd rather than the same old group. So my name is Hollis Milroy, and I'm on the board of directors currently. I'm also running for president this year. So I like to keep things simple. If you know anything about me, I'd like that to be it. I see most engineering students probably have 3 priorities here. 1 is to get their degree, 2 is to get a job when they're done, and 3 is to enhance the time that they spend here while they're getting a degree. So again, I actually would agree with Mauricio on a lot. I think that advocacy is probably one of the bigger things. With the services that we provide are more along the lines of club funding and whatever retail sales, for instance, stores, sites, etc. Why do I think I could be a good fit for president? Again, I agree that the president should probably be the hardest working person in the Engineering Society. There's 4,800 members that you're trying to represent all at the same time. I think I've shown over the past 3 years that I have dedication and commitment when it comes to getting these things done. Ultimately, I think the biggest thing though is communication. I think a lot of people have no idea what NSOC is and what it does and how to actually get involved and change things. And I think if we can increase that by physically reaching out to people, explaining them in simple English what goes on and how it works, I think that's crucial to moving forward. Finally, I guess I'd say there seems to be this expectation, again alluded to actually by Mauricio, that people coming in, the new officers or directors or whatever, have to have some grand sweeping vision of how things are going to change and, you know, be so much better in the glorious future. I would argue that keeping things the same, ensuring that they run for another year with the same degree of accountability and consistency is actually the biggest challenge of all. That actually running things day to day is the most important issue, and as a president, that would be my number one priority, is to have that NSOC structure there for students. That's it.
First question, both candidates. What kind of initiatives will you have to work against? What kind of initiatives will you have to work against the general apathy that pervades the majority of the engineering populace?
To me, the only thing is to just physically be there. I think we've reached the limit of sending the school digest once a week. I think most people probably skim it or not read it and delete it. So I think in terms of reaching out to those people who are already interested in NSOC, that's already been done. I would say that the next step is to just continue, like, you have to spend additional time to go and speak with people, pull them aside, find them at other events, and explain to them, like, what's going on. If people understand maybe a little bit, it takes away the barrier of being afraid of making mistakes or not knowing what's going on.
I think it depends what you mean by apathy. The purpose of the Engineering Society isn't to get people involved in the Engineering Society. It's to be useful to every single student, whether they're involved or not. And the best way that we can do that and get people to vote in our elections or run for positions is to competently execute the things that benefit everyone. And I've shown that I have that experience and that I know how NSOC works. And if we competently execute the things that we run, make sure that our logo's on it, make sure that people know that we are the people running those things. If we have careful oversight of our directors, careful oversight of everything, and run those things well, then people will say, no, the elections are happening. Oh, those are the guys that run the exam bank. Those are the guys that run that nonprofit textbook store where I save a lot of money. Then that's what motivates people to do things for us, if they see that that's interesting. And if we competently execute those things and they know that it's us, that I think is the best thing that we can do to prove to people that we're useful and that we're worth being involved in. And the ones who are interested in being involved in student government are going to get involved, and everyone else is going to benefit from our services nonetheless. So, I'm not going to go out of my way to try to get everyone involved in the Engineering Society, because I know that that's not our purpose. If the government spent more time trying to get you to become an MP than trying to serve you whether you are one or not, then you'd probably be pretty frustrated too. So, my focus would be on executing everything properly.
Okay, with the imminent exit from UTSU, what kind of provisions are you planning to provide in the absence of their services starting?
Okay, so an email was sent to the board outlining all the services that we would need to replicate if we left from the UTSU. So I want to say a couple of things. Number one is that the first thing I ever did was show up to a policy committee meeting to write a referendum question to separate from the UTSU in the winter term of first year. So I know this issue inside, I know what's going on. That year we wrote a referendum question, we published this report, and the UTSU was very mad about it. We met with them on several occasions. We met with the university about this, and we've gone through this process before. And I fully believe that we should leave. Not only could we double club spending if we were eventually to leave and actually replicate their services, but there's a lot of other benefits we could provide as well. In terms of the most important thing we need to provide, the most important thing is health and dental. Rishi's looked into quotes, we've looked into that, we know what we need to provide. The main thing that we need to provide is health and dental. We probably need to hire another person to manage that plan. We need to duplicate their club spending. We need to look at the other services that they run. And we have a report on this already, so it's just a matter of going through the report. The work's been done this year, it was done 3 years ago. We just need to go and actually go and do it. And that means finding those quotes. But the main thing that we need to do right now is take the advice of our lawyers, be very careful with what it is that we do and what we say, and handle the legal aspect of the issue first. No, we're not really going to be looking at implementing the things that we're missing from the UTSU. Maybe 3 or 4 years down the road until we actually win that legal case and we are separated. We might lose. We might not get there. We might have an NSOC president in 2 years that abandons the issue entirely. What we need to do right now is pursue separation to the full extent and take the advice of our lawyers and be very careful and make sure that we do everything in a legitimate manner that's recognized by the university and that will win us the case in court. Because we won't even get to that point of replicating their services until we win our legal case. So that has to be our focus right now.
I mean, there's nothing really to add to that. This process has only just begun. I know it maybe seems like a lot of things are happening fast, but there's no necessary timeline on how long this thing could take, except that legal wheels turn very slowly. So for anything concrete, i.e. financial independence, membership independence from the UTSU, to actually take place, that's going to be, well, I can't put a timeline on it, but it's likely not going to be for the next year. But I would say that that is a major priority, just in the sense of providing better services at lower cost to our students. So I would say we just need to focus on separating from the UTSU first of all, and once we've done that, we already have a report, as mentioned, that outlines every service that they provide and how we replicate it.
Okay, starting for Alice now. How will you build a constructive relationship with campus police, and how will you respond when police reports involving engineering students are referred to you by the UIC?
Well, the campus police already have a good relationship with us for the most part. It depends on who you're talking to in particular. I know sometimes when people end up places that they shouldn't, there's some disagreement that goes on. Ultimately, I think there's not a lot to be done differently with the campus police. We currently deal with them on a very professional and upfront manner. We're honest with them when things happen, and when things are not in our control, we try and explain that to them as quickly as possible. When there's issues that they're concerned about, we provide them with all the information that we can. That's really, I think, about it. I mean, this is an issue which obviously has been around since 1910 when the campus police started. So, I mean, the current situation of it right now, I say is sufficient.
It depends what the scenario is. I mean, I think that one often poorly understood part of the role when people run for president or run for positions is how much time is spent putting out fires, how much time is spent responding to the property manager when something's broken in the atrium, or responding to campus police when someone's cognizant that they shouldn't be caught. And and I think the key here is, what is the engineering society's role when those reports are filed? If at an event that we run, someone who we've put into a leadership position, or someone who, let's say orientation picks someone and they get into a lot of trouble, and then the campus police come to us and they break something, we've got to pay the bill. I mean, that's obviously a different scenario than if there's just vandalism in the atrium and they send us the bill anyway. In one case, we would say, we have to take responsibility for this because it's our job, like it's something that we did and it's something that we pay. And in the other case, we would say, if there's vandalism in the atrium, people are just coming here and breaking things, we're not going to pay the bill because that's not our job. We didn't pass a motion at the board to break something in the atrium. Someone went and did that. So maybe you should staff the police better. Maybe you should increase security on that space. So I think it all depends what the issue is. I mean, it's just a matter of dealing with them professionally. I wouldn't bail people out if they went and did something stupid and it reflected bad on our community. But at the same time, if it was just some random person who went and did something, I wouldn't say, oh yeah, the engineering side is going to pay for this broken thing because some random student broke something, right? So I think it's just a matter of keeping them in the loop, of responding to it professionally, and of realizing what it is that they want from us when they're filing this report. And we've dealt with them before, and I think it'll be fine. And it all depends on what exactly it is that the case of the report is, and whether that applies to the engineering side, or whether it's about a particular student, or what exactly it's about. So it takes some tact, and it's case by case.
To Maurizio, what is your position on which student activities and candidates should be held liable or responsible for? If you wish to elaborate more, you have time.
What activities should be held liable for? Well, we do a lot of things that carry a lot of liability, and we don't decide what has liability, the law decides what has liability. So it's really not our say. I think what we need to do is elect people who are experienced, who have dealt with this before, and who have been part of those operations and understand what liability is, so that we don't end up in a scenario where orientation does something stupid, someone gets hurt, something gets robbed at Hammer's and then we're liable for that, and we're in a lot of trouble. I think it requires careful oversight of our activities, careful oversight of things like SUDS and orientation, which expose us to a lot of risk by their nature. And if we want to keep things student run, then we need to elect people who are experienced, who can actually handle that liability. Lots of things that we do with liability, lots of things that we do are risky, and it's just a matter of having the experience to handle that risk in a responsible way. So when it comes to things like SUDS, it's a matter of meeting with those project directors and setting clear expectations from them and letting them know what's okay and what isn't. It comes to picking good head leaders so they don't get into a lot of trouble. It comes to making sure that Hammer's isn't a huge mess. So it's just a matter of recognizing those issues when they come up And I've been around the engineering society long enough to recognize what those issues are, and I'll be able to handle that liability, manage the risk, and we'll be able to run all the fun things that we run without getting into a lot of trouble.
Yeah, to elaborate on that, essentially it's about doing your due diligence. If you want to prevent yourself from liability, you get to show that you have taken the necessary steps to prevent the catastrophic events which could happen from happening. That already is done, but obviously it takes careful and essentially it's forethought. You have to understand what these activities provide, what are the consequences in terms of which laws it could impact, and then how you're going to show that you've taken the necessary steps to prevent that from happening. If we follow that, like we continue to do for all these various activities, orientation sides being a big one. Obviously they involve a lot of people and some drinking, which combined can create situations that we've already seen in the past few years, people getting injured or things getting removed when they should be removed. But that's essentially it. You have to be diligent and very procedural when you're moving through, and if you do that, you're covered.
As the spokesperson for the society, the president liaises with many people. In your opinion, what are the top 3 relationships that you would focus on maintaining?
First relationship I would focus on maintaining is that with the students. Ultimately, you are the spokesperson for, well, officially you are the spokesperson for all 4,800 members of the Engineering Society. So the first and foremost relationship that you have to have is one with as many students as possible to try and get a sense of what people actually want. The second main one, the main liaise that the president is between faculty and all faculty sub-offices and students. So obviously a good relationship with the dean would be especially important. The third one that I would say is especially relevant right now is somebody in the provost's office, because ultimately as this decision as the process to separate from UTSU proceeds, assuming it proceeds favorably, you're going to need a strong relationship with the university, because ultimately they will be the ones tasked with redirecting the funds when that time should come.
I think the university is a big place, and it's not enough to just say, oh, the faculty and the person who's in charge of the faculty, because if you've actually been through the process, you know that there's people who are more influential than the dean for the things that we actually need done. So one of the main relationships I would establish is with the director of the dean's office, because they're one of the main gatekeepers for what the dean actually deals with, and who deals with her schedules and what meetings she's booked and who she's going to talk to and when. So that would be one of the main people. Second would be the property manager. For a lot of the issues that happen in SF and common space, that person is the one who comes to us immediately when something gets broken and says, I do or don't have a budget to fix this thing. I am or I'm not going to fix the water damage ceiling in the atrium. So that would be another relationship that we need to build and make sure that because I think infrastructure is one of the things that, it's one of the most important things that we deal with, and it's one of the things that's directly related to a budget, and I think that given the amount of times that that person emails us, I think that's one of the most important relationships as well. And another thing would probably be, I think students are a given, but as well as the faculty would be someone on the academic level, probably the vice dean undergraduate, who's the main contact for academic issues at the faculty level. Other relationships I would explore would be the department chairs, the discipline clubs, and those people that do things at the department level, because I think that a lot of the academic issues are done on a more nuanced level at the departmental level, rather than just showing up to an NSOC faculty meeting and spewing stuff at the vice dean and the dean. So the main people will be the property manager, department chairs, and the director of the dean's office. It takes a more nuanced approach than just emailing the dean. The dean has a lot of things to do, and dealing with students is just not one of the things that she does, because she's a spokesperson for the faculty, and she spends most of her time working on research or representing the faculty. The vice dean undergraduate and the director of the dean's office have a lot more to do with that anyways. So I recognize the nuances, and I'll be able to handle those and talk to the right people at the right time.
All right. What is your position regarding use of the engineering communications room by NSOC publications? Do you plan on continuing to enforce the current policy, or would you enact changes? And if you do plan on changing UTSU's policies, what specific changes would you like to see?
I think this is the first year that I've been here that I've seen the room actually be in a usable state that isn't just a dumping ground for everything that happened with the Engineering Society. I think there's still room. I think now it's time, let's give people slightly more freedom. I think that, for example, if you're drinking a drink that has a sealable lid, you should be able to drink that. You should be able to have like a bottle of water with you. I think that's okay. One of the things I would do is reassign it to Rhonda. Now that we've seen that the room can be clean, I would assign that to Rhonda and have her deal with the bookings and with the enforcement of it. I don't think we need a separate contract for a separate person. I think that works very well this year because the person who was in charge of it actually had a lot of renovations to do, and that's not something we would expect the business manager to do. But just booking a room, I mean, it's way easier to book EngCom than any other room. So I would give that to Rhonda, make it a permanent thing that we do. And if someone, give it slightly more freedom. So I don't want people eating in there, but if they're having like water, that's fine as long as it has a sealable lid. As soon as they spill something and they don't clean it up or they leave their garbage there, they're out of there. So, and I think that policy's worked pretty well this year in keeping it clean. And I think it's worked well this year. I would just assign it to Rhonda and be slightly more lax, but not tremendously. And I think it also depends on what the publication want out of it. So I think at the beginning of the year, it'd be good to talk to them and say, what did you think of how the room was used last year? Because I didn't spend a lot of time in there, but they did. So the first thing I would do is talk to them and say, what additional freedoms would you like? And then compare that to my own judgment of what I've seen in the past of what we should or shouldn't allow. But I think we need to involve them, involve Rhonda in the process as well, move the bookings to her, and maybe be slightly more lax on the rules now that we know it can be.
Yeah, I would say that the rules this year helped ensure that it stayed clean once it was cleaned up at the beginning of the year. In case you guys don't know, essentially there was strict control by Angelo, the EngCom director. He had access to the key. He had to let you in and let you out. Well, not let you out. He had to let you in. All bookings had to occur. Wasn't that strict. So there was obviously a very strict policy on no food or water or anything like that. I think it's a good thing. I think it's not only a room for publications, but it's a meeting space for anyone in the engineering society. If you want to hold a meeting, you can use EngCom. Having Rhonda run the bookings next year will probably be the best choice. And I would say we have to take relaxing the rules on what you're allowed to bring in on a case-by-case basis. I think I'm a little skeptical that allowing people to bring some things in and not other things is going to work. I mean, look at the ECF computer labs, for example. I mean, they have computers in there, and they have a guy walking around during most of the day that tries to catch people eating food. And nevertheless, there's always at least 4 or 5 people in the lab eating food at any given time. So if we want it to be clean, if we want it to be a usable space, we have to have strict rules. And so I would still enforce the strict rules on that. The access I would give to Rhonda.
Okay, at this point, I'm going to open up questions to anyone in here. Going on first come, first served basis for the next couple while we have time. So starting with Patrick. Also, you may address questions to an individual candidate if you so wish.
Okay, well, this is both candidates you or you choose. So obviously you're not running a site, so you don't get to choose the opposite team, and not the world. So in the case that someone is just not working, you don't feel you're working well, then what is the process that you pursue to either improve that relationship and ultimately get them? And if they were not working out, you would consider teaching them. I'll listen first.
Sure. The biggest thing to have a good relationship for something like the Engineering Society, I think, is to keep things business-like. If you're friends with the other people who are officers, that's great. If you get along with them, that's also great. But number one, this is business. You're doing a service for students, and so you have to treat it like business. And that just means being on time, being formal, being polite, standard common courtesy. If there's a real particular issue where myself, I'm not getting along with one of the officers, I mean, again, I would have to deal with that, in the particular case that it is. But in terms of whether I would try and move towards some sort of impeachment if I didn't get along with them, no, I wouldn't do that. Impeachment is when someone who's been elected is not fulfilling their role and they're negatively impacting students as a result. So, again, to reiterate, to have a good relationship in NSOC, keep things plain, keep things business-like.
There's a couple of reasons why this isn't business. We're all students, we're all volunteers, and this is not like a business, it's more like a big high school. So I think that those things play into how we deal with people. And the first thing I would do, and this is something I dealt with when I was president of ESCO, was, I had 2 VPs that were good, 2 that were absolutely terrible. And there's different ways of dealing with different things. And the first thing that I would do is set clear expectations of what it is that we hope to accomplish in like the day that we are elected and through the week after, and say, this is what we expect. These are the basic things that you have to do every week. This is when you have to be in the office to sign checks. This is like these are the other things you have to do. What big projects are you working on? When do you hope to get them done? And to be on the same page with everyone. When I was an officer, we had a meeting at the beginning of the year where about 2 months after being officers, we just discussed what personal qualities we disliked in each other. And we just got that out of the way. And that's something I would do again. It was actually pretty useful because everyone got to be really honest with each other. And I've been through that process before. I've been on an officer team where I didn't like some other person, and then I got along with them after. And it's just part of human nature. And I think that if we're honest and open with each other, and we treat each other like students and like normal people that we are, and set those expectations, then it can work. And I think there's a difference between different kinds of people. There's people who do everything and that's fine, but the other people who don't do stuff. There's people who maybe they need some mentoring and support because they just don't know what they're doing, but they're really eager and they want to learn. Maybe they want to work on things that aren't really that important or that shouldn't, or that I disagree should be priorities, and that can be dealt with in a different manner. Maybe they are like egregiously bad and just want to cause a lot of trouble and are just, that they're not good at all, and they're just working on things that aren't even good, that are actually negative. And each of those things requires tact and requires careful planning. I've been around for 3 years. I've seen all kinds of teams. I've seen all kinds of people through my involvement, and I can deal with each scenario as it happens. And it has to be done on a case-by-case basis. I don't think there's any formula that has to be done, but if we set clear expectations at the beginning and we're honest and open with each other, that would be the most important thing to do.
All right, they just, no, okay. Evan?
This one's directed right at Mauricio.
Right.
So you mentioned in your opening statement about how you would eliminate the recently created external relations director position. I was just wondering why you would do that, considering how often school likes to talk about how we get ideas for things like the endowment fund or the cafeteria from relationships with other schools. And yeah, I guess why you want to kind of distance ourselves more from other schools.
Okay, so I'm going to address it in a couple of parts. Number one is we wouldn't be distancing ourselves, because the reason I want to eliminate it is because I think that all those things are already handled by other people. So for example, the part of talking to other schools is handled by the president. The part of talking to other colleges is also handled by the president already. Talking to, running social events and running bus trips, that's handled by Blue and Gold. So we wouldn't actually be doing anything different. The other thing is learning from other schools. I was a VP external, and you know what I learned when I went to conferences? That us, Queens, McMaster, and Waterloo are the only schools that have their stuff together. The other NSTOCs are more like social clubs, so we actually don't learn very much from them. And Waterloo is a website, so we knew they had an endowment fund before we went to a conference to go drink with them in St. John's, and we paid $2,000 for all those people to go there. We know what the other schools are running. We know that Queens has 6 commercial operations, and we have a lot to learn from them. And we can have those personal relationships without paying money for one individual to go travel everywhere. If we decide that something should be a project, then we can go and we can look into it and we can do it appropriately. So the reason I want to get rid of it is because I don't think that we need one person to go to a bunch of conferences and work through the federated structure of ESCO and CFES. I think that structure might be useful to Western to talk to Guelph. It's not really useful for big schools with totally different problems and that evolved in totally different directions for them to solve each other's problems talking through that structure. So I think that we wouldn't be losing out on anything. Most of the things that we've learned from other schools we would have learned them anyways, and we didn't really learn that much from them. The most important thing we did for the endowment fund wasn't to go to a conference to go drink with people and talk to them for 5 minutes about the endowment fund at a social event. It was to drive to Waterloo on a day that wasn't a conference and meet with the endowment fund director, a person who's never been to a conference anyways. And I think that's a lot more effective than going to the conferences and doing that. And we can do those activities without having an external relations director. So it's not that I have anything against that kind of work. I did that kind of work. And what I learned from that is that the structure that we use is not appropriate, and I think that we don't need that much money to do it. And I think it'd be better if we just did it through part of our other projects than had one person whose specific job was to look for things for NSOC to do.
All right, anything?
Okay, this is a specific question to Hollis. I know Mauricio has a lot of experience in terms of being in a presidential role, in terms of overseeing officers and project management kind of role. I just want to hear your experience on this. What do you think you bring to the table, or what experience do you think you have that makes you a better candidate?
Sure. Okay, well, my involvement with NSOC started after first year in the summer, getting involved with Frost Week. At that point, I was just a volunteer, just running around doing Joe jobs, trying to understand the structure that was above me. When third year rolled around, I took a more leadership role running the Hard House Farm trip. So that involved a lot more coordination with other leaders. It required planning stuff, having people work under you in a structure. Moving on to fourth year, I've had to diversify a little bit. I have been involved in a few things this year, in planning events, etc. I mean, ultimately, I would say that my background is more of a project management style. Working at the CN Tower in the summer of 2011, I was working directly under a project manager, so essentially I had to coordinate with every contracting company that was coming in and building the edge block. So, I mean, from a logistics point of view, from getting things done, assigning people jobs, keeping up, ensuring that those jobs are completed, and seeing that the overall project itself is moving forward on schedule, I would say that's kind of where my strongest background is. I'd also argue though that, especially this year, I've had a chance to liaise with numerous groups, both people in the engineering faculty, the engineering outreach office, and the campus police. And so I think that experience has kind of grounded me fairly strongly in the roles that a president would have to fill.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions? Teresa?
At the November 2012 accountability meeting, Rishi, our current ENGSOC president, made a comment that as president, he didn't particularly have a vision for the engineering society and for school as a whole. So questions for both candidates. Do you think that it's important for the president to have vision for school and the society? And whatever your answer is, why?
Okay, I support the idea that the president should not be coming in with some sort of ideal that they force upon the engineering society. Rather, again, I see it as a service, providing a structure, and that's the biggest and most important element. Your structure is that you advocate on behalf of students and you ensure that services are provided for students. So I completely agree.
My vision is as follows. I think the most important things that we do are our academic representation and our support for student clubs and teams. And I know that there's a lot of ongoing projects that we're going to have to execute, whether they're the things that the president thinks are important or the most important things or not. Those things are the continued scrutiny of the cafeteria and making sure that they are set in order and that they are able to be successful. The UTSU issue, the endowment fund. So I'm going to work to make those things work well. And I do have a set of things that I think are more important than others for ENGSOC to work on. And I think part of the president's role is when all these projects come, there's 100 things that everyone wants to work on at the beginning of the year, but there's only time to do 10 of them. So how do you pick which 10 are the most important? And that's what I think part of the role of the president is, to provide that guidance and that experience based on what they've done before and based on what they've seen. And the other thing is, it's a balancing act. I'm not going to go to all of our project directors and say, this is my vision, so you better share my vision. I'm only going to pick people with my vision, and if you don't share my vision, then you're out. So I think it's also about supporting those other people and giving them the autonomy to pursue their vision and their project as well, under the overall vision of the engineering side working on things that matter to the most people. And I think it's a balancing act. I don't think it's one way or the other. You do need to provide some guidance, but you also need to know when to back off and let people have their autonomy and run their project. And I think I'm pretty qualified to handle that balance.
Okay, I'll take one last question, so if anyone has. Jimmy Liu.
So I don't know if everyone knows, but the president gets a $10,000 scholarship. Do you guys think that it's well deserved, or do you think there's better use for that $10,000?
Is that for both?
It's for both people, yes.
All right, Maurizio, you start.
Well, someone donated that amount of money, and they said, this is what the terms of the agreement are. So unless we're going to go to that person and redetermine what that amount of money is going to be, I mean, I'd rather work on the endowment fund than work on renegotiating that amount of money. I do think that you do forego income that you could have gotten in the summer. You do a lot. I'm doing it because I actually want to do this job. I think that for that amount of money, instead I could not be the president and work on my marks, and that would probably be on my long-term interest anyways. I'm doing this because I really care about ENGSOC, and I really do care about the unique student government role that we play and the representative role that we play in this community. So that's why I'm doing it. In terms of going out of my way to try to get that money renegotiated, I think there's much more important things to deal with. It's probably not even up to us because that's what the person who's maybe is even dead is decided that's what the money is going to be used for anyways. So, I recognize the problem when I see one. I don't want to break things that aren't worth fixing. And, if a lot of people showed up and said, we should use that money on this other thing and we should try to negotiate that, then I would go and I would do it.
Yeah, I mean, when I first found out about it last year, I actually was obviously a little against it because I felt that it would, in a way, represented almost a sort of compensation for taking a role, a volunteer role. However, I think, well, there's two things. One is that we're not in control of that money necessarily, per se. It's money that has been allocated for the specific purpose. Now, that being said, I mean, I think it serves a positive role if it allows whoever is serving as president to dedicate themselves 100% to NSOC over the summer. Typically, most students working summer to help offset tuition costs. So if it's working in a positive role, if it's allowing the president to better serve the 4,800 members, then I think it's money well spent.
That's a good question. I will, you may ask each other any question. So choose. Wait, all of you just up?
Yeah.
So you may ask me.
Well, I noticed business cards going around and saying that, if you care about jobs and your education, then, talk to me and meet you. So I just want to know more detail on, what it is that you mean by you're going to help people get jobs and a good education. What is it that you're going to do? Because I haven't heard much of that yet.
So what I mean by listing those three things is when I'm making a decision, because obviously this year, a lot of decisions will have to get made. I see those as the first three priorities in that order to be answered. So any decision that gets made, you have to check off box 1, how does it help people get their degrees? Check off box 2, how does it help people get a job? And then check off box 3. What I'm trying to say is that in ranking issues of importance to students, that is the order of importance that I, from talking to most people, tend to get a sense of. People come here because they want a degree and they want a job at the end of it. They also want certain services while they're here. They like to get involved in clubs and enhance their time. But number 1 and number 2, I think, are often overlooked. And when it comes time to making decisions, that's where we're going to fall.
Cool. Do you have any questions for Tim?
Not this time.
All right. Cool. That will, no.
It's a short question.
How short? We'll be
Really short.
All right, fuck it, go for it.
Okay. I'm obligated to ask this question to both of you.
Is this from the Twig?
Would you rather fight 100 horse-sized horses or 1 horse-sized duck? That's the whole game.
That's the
We're skipping this.
Engineering needs answers.
You have like 20 seconds, go.
I don't know. I'd probably take on the 100 because then you can break it down into smaller pieces. So that might be like a generic answer, but I don't even lift, so I probably can't take the duck size. No, the horse-sized duck. Yeah, that's scary. It's got like wings and stuff. I don't want to take over the little tiny horses. That's
Just staying with my theme of simplicity, I would take on the horse-sized duck.
it has wings.